It started on a cold, rain-swept highway in Portland. Ethan Miller, a struggling single father and mechanic, risked his life to pull the powerful CEO Aurora Sterling from the wreckage of her burning car. When Aurora, a woman who valued everything in terms of assets and transactions, offered him $2,000 for his heroism, Ethan flatly refused, shocking her with a dignity she had never encountered. Why did this brief, impossible encounter cause Aurora to shatter the glass walls of her cold empire? Why did she risk her entire fortune to elevate the simple mechanic who rejected her money? What ruthless economic attacks did the vengeful Victor Thorne unleash to destroy this relationship they were building? And what bitter struggles did the couple endure? Follow this incredible story of love, sacrifice, and the ultimate battle against wealth. If this story moves you, tell us where you're watching from in the comments. Your city, your state, or your country. And don't forget to subscribe for more touching tales. The rain in Portland, Oregon was not the gentle mist of late spring. It was a furious cold deluge, slicing visibility to near zero. Headlights struggled against the torrent as Ethan Miller navigated his battered 20-year-old pickup truck, the Iron Lung, back toward the modest rental house where his daughter Lily was currently asleep. He was bone-tired, smelling of ozone grease and sweat, having spent the last 14 hours coaxing life back into a dilapidated city bus engine. Ethan was 38, a widower for 5 years, and a master mechanic. He was poor, but he was honorable. Everything he did was measured against Lily's stability. As he turned onto the darkened stretch of highway bordering the Willamette River, the rhythmic sweep of his wipers failed to mask the immediate shift in the night's ambiance. A metallic shriek tore through the rain, followed by the sickening, prolonged crunch of tearing steel. Ethan slammed on the brakes. Ahead, amidst the spray and gloom, a plume of acrid smoke was rising, illuminated intermittently by flashes of chaotic emergency lights from a recent severe accident. The source of the crash was a sleek black luxury sedan, the kind of vehicle that cost more than Ethan made in 3 years, now crumpled against a concrete barrier. He didn't hesitate. He grabbed the heavy flashlight from the dash and plunged into the rain. The air was thick with the smell of gasoline. Reaching the wreck, he saw the car was empty except for the driver. The car had struck the barrier on the passenger side, folding the bodywork inward. The airbags had deployed, engulfing the driver. "Hello, can anyone hear me?" he shouted over the storm. A faint, strained cough answered him. The driver was a woman impeccably dressed in a tailored black suit. She was conscious but clearly trapped, pinned by the deployed airbag and the inward collapse of the mangled doorframe. "I'm stuck. My door won't open," she whispered, her voice tight with adrenaline. "I think I'm okay, just minor scrapes. But I can't move." Ethan shone his light, assessing the situation. She was indeed lucky. The bulk of the impact was on the car's side, not directly where she sat. "I'm Ethan Miller. I'm a mechanic," he informed her, his voice low and steady. "You're not badly hurt, but the car is leaking gas. We need to get you out immediately." He knew prying the door was impossible without specialized equipment. Working swiftly, he used the pointed end of his flashlight to shatter the rear passenger window. He then reached in and with a powerful wrench managed to manually pull the seat down. "Listen to me," he instructed. "Your car is seconds away from catching fire. I'm going to pull you through this opening. Brace yourself." He hauled her with professional force, dragging her over the console and through the narrow opening. She gasped as her body scraped past the sharp edges, but she was out. He carried her quickly away from the car, the driving rain washing over them, until they reached the relative safety of the concrete barrier 50 feet down the road. Just as the first flicker of flames erupted from the engine block, followed almost immediately by a concussive whoomph that rattled the highway. The distant wail of sirens finally grew louder. Ethan gently lowered her to her feet. She was trembling violently, partly from shock and partly from the cold. Her suit was torn and she had superficial cuts on her face and arms, but she appeared structurally sound. "You're alive," Ethan stated simply. And you look like you just went 10 rounds with a boxing champion. We're safe here." She leaned heavily against the barrier, struggling to breathe. "Thank you. I can't call anyone. My phone is gone. And I don't think any cab is coming out here tonight." The rain was relentless and the temperature was dropping quickly. Ethan looked at her, this powerful, soaked woman in expensive clothes, shaking uncontrollably, standing abandoned on a dark highway. He knew the police and ambulance would take time, and he couldn't leave her alone. "Look," Ethan said, pulling off his soaked canvas jacket, revealing his grease-stained t-shirt. "You need to get warm now. My house is 10 minutes away, just down the road. It's small, but it's dry. We can wait for the rain to stop, or for the morning, and then figure out the rest. I'll make a phone call for you when we get there. I won't leave you out here alone." Aurora Sterling, for it was she stared at him. To accept a ride from a complete stranger, a mechanic smelling of oil, and to go to his home was against every protocol and boundary she had established in her life. But the thought of standing there cold and vulnerable was worse. She was too exhausted to fight. "Me! My name is Aurora Sterling," she said, her voice regaining some of its CEO precision. "And I accept your hospitality, Mr. Miller, for now." The next morning dawned gray and damp. Aurora awoke on a small, surprisingly comfortable sofa, covered by a knitted blanket that smelled faintly of cinnamon and laundry detergent. She was now wearing one of Ethan's old faded gray t-shirts, her ruined suit having been salvaged and hung over a chair. The noise of the morning was not the usual hushed efficiency of her penthouse staff, but the sound of sizzling bacon and childish giggles. She walked out into the kitchen. Ethan was standing over the stove wearing his cleaner work clothes. A 7-year-old girl with bright red hair, Lily, was stacking pancakes shaped like cartoon animals. Aurora had her composure back, cold and professional. She carried the weight of her identity like armor. "Good morning," she said, her voice smooth and devoid of warmth. Ethan turned his expression reserved. "Good morning, Miss Sterling. You look better. I called the hospital this morning. They confirmed your driver is stable. And I took the liberty of calling your executive assistant. They know you're safe, but they have no idea where you are. They're frantic." "Good," she replied, unmoved by her staff's distress. She retrieved her briefcase from the coffee table. "Mr. Miller," she stated, pulling out a crisp wad of United States currency secured with a band. "I owe you more than I can articulate. You risked your life and you provided shelter. This is $2,000. Compensation for the trauma, the dry cleaning of your shirt, and the inconvenience." She held it out to him as an impersonal transaction. Ethan's smile vanished. His face hardened instantly. The offer was a dismissal, a quick payment to clear a debt and remove her from his life. It treated his heroic, selfless action with the casual indifference of buying a commodity. He gently pushed the money away, his eyes holding hers with firm, unwavering integrity. "Ms. Sterling," he said, his voice quiet but intense, "I appreciate the thought, but I don't accept payment for helping someone in trouble." Her composure cracked a small, visible fracture. Annoyance mingled with confusion. "Don't be ridiculous. Everyone accepts compensation. Take it, Mr. Miller. I'd rather not have outstanding debts to strangers." "It's not a debt, Miss Sterling. It was an action. My daughter Lily knows we don't help people for money. We do it because it's the right thing to do. If you think $2,000 can pay for saving a life or for my dignity, you have a very poor understanding of both." He paused, letting his simple honor stand against her overwhelming wealth. "Please, keep your money." Aurora Sterling, CEO, was speechless. She was used to people valuing everything at a price. This man standing in his humble kitchen had just told her that her money meant nothing in the face of his principles. Her eyes drifted past him, landing on a slightly warped framed photograph sitting on a tiny shelf next to a chipped ceramic mug. It was an image of Ethan younger and smiling, standing shoulder to shoulder with a beautiful woman and holding a baby, presumably Lily. The picture was faded, the frame cheap, but the joy and the absolute sense of belonging radiating from the image were palpable. It was a family, a simple, honest, loving unit built on something stronger than stock prices or mergers. Aurora Sterling, who had been raised by nannies and lawyers in a mansion where love was a contract and warmth was a thermostat setting, realized in that instant that the man before her possessed a profound wealth she lacked. She snapped her briefcase shut. "Very well, Mr. Miller," she murmured, her voice strangely subdued. "But our paths are not finished crossing. You saved my life. That is not something I forget easily." Gee. She turned, collected her suit, and left the small house, leaving behind the rich, comforting scent of pancakes and family. The Sterling Group offices occupied the top 30 floors of the tallest building in downtown Portland, a monument of glass and steel. Aurora Sterling, 2 weeks after the crash, sat in her 45th floor boardroom listening to quarterly reports. The air conditioning was flawless, the lighting meticulous, and the silence punctuated only by the crisp rustle of paper and the occasional chime of a notification was absolute. Yet Aurora felt none of her usual cold clinical control. Her near-death experience had done more than just scratch her arm. It had scratched her veneer. The familiar rush of closing a deal or navigating a hostile takeover had been replaced by a gnawing existential dread, a visceral fear of fragility that no amount of money could silence. She felt the need to escape, to breathe air that didn't smell like polished marble and filtered air. And oddly, her internal compass kept pointing toward the scent of ozone and grease. The first visit to Ethan Miller's garage a few days after the crash had been under the pretext of retrieving the remains of her suit. The next visit, she'd claimed she needed Ethan to assess a vintage car for a potential investment, a blatant lie. Now, a week later, she drove her new, even more discreet sedan to the industrial district just outside the city center without an excuse at all. Ethan's garage, Miller's Mechanics, was a chaotic symphony of organized labor. Tools were hung neatly, but the floor was perpetually marked with oil stains and the various parts of disassembled engines. The air hummed with effort. Ms. Sterling Ethan greeted her, wiping his hands on a rag, his face etched with familiar tiredness. "You're back. Nothing wrong with this one, is there? I checked the oil this morning." "No." Aurora admitted, leaning against a workbench covered in bolts and spanners. I needed some fresh air. The office is stifling." Ethan looked at her, his dark eyes discerning, but he offered no judgment. Stifling air is expensive air, I suppose. He returned to working on a massive rusted pickup truck engine, his brow furrowed in concentration. Aurora watched him work. His movements were efficient, honest, and completely absorbed in the task. Here, in this loud, messy place, everything was real. A bolt was either tightened or loose. A part either worked or it didn't. There were no hidden agendas, no political maneuvers, just physics and competence. She found herself relaxing her shoulders, dropping from their habitual tension. She felt safe, unjudged, merely an observer in a world she didn't belong to. On one visit, Lily came running into the garage after school, wearing a brightly colored backpack and smelling of playground dirt. Lily was unafraid of Aurora's imposing presence. "Hello, Miss Aurora," Lily exclaimed, completely missing the corporate CEO. "Look, I made a car out of Legos. It needs oil, Daddy says." Aurora, who hadn't touched a toy since her childhood, Nanny packed them away, stared awkwardly at the plastic brick creation. "It's very structured," Aurora managed, trying to sound encouraging. Lily giggled. "It's a race car. You don't say structured, you say vroom." Lily made an exaggerated racing noise, and Aurora surprisingly found herself mirroring the sound, a spontaneous, genuine burst of laughter that startled Ethan and made Lily beam. It was loud and slightly awkward, utterly unlike the controlled, polite sounds she permitted in public. It was the laugh of a young woman who had forgotten how to simply be. Ethan watched the interaction, and it was in these small, unguarded moments that his view of her began to shift. He saw the genuine, curious girl beneath the cold, formidable armor of the CEO. He saw her vulnerability, her awkwardness around simple human connection, and her almost desperate hunger for the ordinary. Ethan was falling for the real woman, not the headline. He realized he was no longer thinking of her as the woman he saved, but the woman he wanted to protect from the very world she controlled. The feeling of being an observer quickly transformed into a desire to truly help Ethan. Aurora saw how hard he worked the limitations of his cramped space and the enormous potential he possessed if he had the resources. She also knew his quiet refusal of the 2,000 was rooted in his commitment to his principles. Any offer of cash would be an insult. Aurora devised a plan that honored his integrity while simultaneously weaving him deeper into her life and her life into his. She approached him late one evening as he was cleaning up, smelling of solvent. "Ethan," she began, leaning against the doorframe, still wearing the sharp business clothes that always seemed out of place in his dusty world. "I need to discuss something with you, and I need you to listen, not react with your dignity, but with your logic." Ethan sighed, sensing a complicated pitch. "All right, Miss Sterling. Lay it on me. That garage you're in now, it's cramped. You have talent, but you're constrained by space and outdated equipment. I've found a facility a few miles from here, twice the size, modern lifts, fully paid for, registered, under a new holding company." Ethan looked at her. His eyes narrowed. "And what do you want in exchange, Aurora?" He used her first name, a quiet shift in their dynamic. "I want you to run it. I want you to expand Miller's Mechanics. But that's not the main part." She took a deep breath. "I've been doing some research on the difficulties facing single parents in Portland. The high cost of childcare, the difficulty of maintaining a working vehicle, juggling schedules. It's overwhelming. So I've established a foundation, the Lily's Light Foundation." Ethan remained silent, his arms crossed, waiting for the catch. "The foundation is fully funded. Its core mission is to provide support resources and especially affordable, reliable vehicle repair for single parents struggling to make ends meet," Aurora explained. "But I cannot run it. I am a machine of profit margins and acquisitions. I don't understand empathy or dignity or the struggle to make ends meet. You do." She stepped closer, the intensity in her eyes piercing. "I want you to come on board as the Foundation's Director of Operations. You will oversee the garage expansion, and more importantly, you will ensure the Foundation's work is done with the honor and integrity that you demonstrated when you refused my $2,000. You will be the moral compass. I need your character, Ethan, not your labor." Ethan was silent for a long moment, processing the enormity of the offer. This wasn't a handout. This was a chance to truly help his community, the very core of his self-worth. "And what is the cost of this moral compass?" he finally asked. "A salary, a legitimate standard management contract, and a responsibility you will likely find overwhelming," she replied, a faint smile touching her lips. "It's a chance for you to give back on a scale you never could before. You accept not for the money, but for the mothers and fathers like you." Ethan looked down, kicking at a stray bolt. He thought of Lily and the security this would give them, but more importantly, he thought of the families he knew who struggled to pay rent or fix a broken starter motor. "I accept the position, and I will run that garage," Ethan said, looking up, his resolve firm. "But there are conditions, Aurora. The salary is set by the Foundation Board, no bonuses from your pocket. And the new garage may be shiny, but I'm keeping my old truck, the Iron Lung. It's a symbol of where I came from, and I'm going to keep her running. It reminds me and everyone else that the work we do is honest." Aurora nodded slowly, a deep, satisfied feeling settling in her chest. She hadn't bought him, she had recruited his soul. Agreed, Ethan Miller. Let the work be honest. As she turned to leave, she paused. Ethan was reaching into the corner, picking up the small, worn baseball cap Lily had forgotten. "Thank you, Ethan," she whispered, "for being the light." He looked at her, seeing the deep emotional weariness in her eyes. "It's not me, Aurora. It's Lily. She's the light." But Aurora knew the truth. Lily was the proof. Ethan was the sanctuary. She felt the first stirrings of an emotion that was far more dangerous and far more vital than corporate success. She hadn't just saved her life on that rainy night. She had found the beginning of her healing. The honeymoon period for Ethan Miller and Aurora Sterling lasted exactly 4 weeks. That was how long it took the mainstream media in Portland to sniff out the relationship between the Sterling Group's CEO and the single father mechanic running her new foundation. The headlines were vicious and immediate. The Oregon Herald ran a front-page story under the glaring title, "From Wrench to Riches, Sterling's CEO Dates Her Charity Case." Tabloids painted Ethan as a calculating opportunist, a gold digger who had leveraged a dramatic car crash into an executive position and the affection of a billionaire. Ethan felt the sting of the attacks deeply. He had insisted on keeping the iron lung his old truck visible outside the sparkling new facility to remind himself of his roots, but the press now mocked it as a prop for his rags to riches charade. He tried to ignore it, focusing instead on the practical reality of running the Lily's Light Foundation and mentoring other struggling single parents. But the media noise was just the overt attack. The structural warfare was launched by Victor Thorne. Victor, the CEO of Thorne Industries and Aurora's partner in numerous joint ventures, was accustomed to viewing the world as a complex series of assets and liabilities. Aurora was his most valuable asset, brilliant, powerful, and impeccably presented. Their relationship, though lacking any genuine emotional warmth, was a crucial corporate alliance, a silent contract built on shared ambition and mutual benefit. Victor saw Ethan not as a rival for Aurora's affection, but as a dangerous vulnerability. Ethan represented an instability that could compromise their business interests. The first move came subtly. Victor organized a high-profile charity gala, ostensibly to support one of his own environmental causes. He used the event to publicly pressure Aurora. Standing on a stage beneath dazzling chandeliers, Victor took the microphone. He praised Aurora, his voice smooth and persuasive. "Aurora and I have built empires together. The synergy is undeniable," he declared, pulling Aurora to his side and placing an arm possessively around her waist. "And while we're celebrating structure and security tonight, I want to say that I hope we can soon cement this partnership both professionally and personally." The implication was clear: a marriage proposal for a corporate alliance. Aurora, though wearing a practiced smile, felt the invisible chains tighten. She had not yet broken things off with Victor, partly due to the complex business entanglements, and partly due to a lingering, paralyzing fear of fully stepping away from the familiar, if cold, safety he represented. Later that week, the attacks turned economic. Ethan was in his new office, a space far too plush for his comfort, reviewing the monthly expenses for the new garage. He received a series of phone calls and emails that sent a chilling spike of fear straight through his resolve. First, his primary commercial bank called. They were reviewing his line of credit for the garage, citing concerns regarding the financial stability of the principal shareholder, obliquely referring to the media storm around Aurora. Then, his largest supplier of auto parts abruptly canceled their long-term contract, citing unforeseen logistical changes. Finally, the city inspector's office scheduled an urgent, unplanned review of the garage's newly installed hydraulic lifts. Ethan was smart enough to connect the dots instantly. This was Victor Thorne. No single incident was fatal, but together they threatened to choke the life out of the garage. The business was barely established, and if the line of credit was pulled or the supplier relationship severed, the garage could face bankruptcy within a month. It would destroy not only his opportunity, but also the fledgling Lily's Light Foundation. Victor was attacking the one thing Ethan had accepted from Aurora, the chance to help others. The final blow came directly. Victor Thorne requested a private meeting with Ethan Miller, not at the Sterling offices, but at a discreet, luxurious penthouse suite overlooking the city. Ethan arrived wearing his cleanest denim jacket, his hands freshly scrubbed but still scarred. Victor, impeccably tailored and radiating effortless power, did not offer a handshake. Mr. Miller, Victor began gesturing toward a glass wall that offered a dizzying view of Portland. Let's dispense with the pleasantries. I know what you are, and I know what you want. And I know you don't belong here. I'm here because Aurora asked me to be here, Ethan replied calmly, his heart pounding but his voice steady. Victor smiled, a cold, empty expression. Aurora is an asset, a magnificent one who unfortunately has a weakness for damaged goods and rescue missions. She is playing out a fantasy of charity by elevating you. I am here to end her indulgence. Victor placed a thick-sealed manila envelope on the polished glass table. Inside this envelope is a cashier's check for $5 million, tax-free, a completely legal separation bonus. Ethan stared at the envelope, his breath catching slightly. $5 million, enough to secure Lily's future 100 times over, enough to ensure she never had to worry about rent, college, or fixing an old truck. The deal is simple, Mr. Miller. You cash the check and you disappear. You leave Portland, you leave the foundation, you leave Aurora. Permanently. You gain security. She gains her stability and her respect back. We both win. Ethan felt the intense internal grapple. He saw Lily's face, happy, secure, free of worry. He could buy her anything. He could retire. He could be safe. You could be safe. Lily could be safe. Then he remembered the smell of the burning wreckage, the way Aurora's eyes had pleaded with him, and the quiet pride in his own voice when he had refused her $2,000. He remembered the look of pure joy on Aurora's face when she had laughed with Lily, and the simple honor of turning an honest wrench. The money, the immense weight of it, felt toxic. Ethan leaned forward, placing his scarred hands flat on the glass table, inches from the envelope. Victor, Ethan said, using his name with quiet authority. You have miscalculated. I didn't help Aurora for money. I didn't take the foundation for money, and I won't leave her for money. You see the world in terms of assets and liabilities. You think you can buy every emotion. He pushed the envelope back toward Victor, his action definitive. You can buy a building, you can buy a company, and you can certainly buy my silence. But you can't buy my soul, Victor. You can't buy my honor. And you can't buy Aurora's love, because Aurora is not for sale. I love the woman you see as an asset, and my love is not for sale. Victor's cold smile vanished completely. His eyes narrowed with genuine fury. You will regret this, Miller. That money was your only clean way out. Now when you lose that garage and Aurora loses her face, you will know exactly who destroyed you. I know who destroyed me, Victor. I saw you look at Aurora like a trophy, Ethan countered, rising to his feet. You can tear down the building, but you can't destroy the foundation we're building. It's not made of steel. It's made of honesty. Ethan walked toward the exit, leaving Victor Thorne standing alone in his opulent cage, the untouched envelope, a glaring testament to the failure of pure monetary power. The consequences of refusing Victor Thorne's millions were swift and merciless. Within 72 hours of the confrontation, the city inspector arrived unannounced at the new garage, citing vague structural concerns and halting all work on the hydraulic lifts. The commercial bank officially froze the Lily's Light Foundation's line of credit. The headlines, already brutal, now screamed accusations of financial instability and ethical misconduct directly implicating Aurora. Ethan watched the chaos unfold from the small, cluttered desk in his rental house. He felt a profound, crushing responsibility. He had managed to protect his dignity, but in doing so, he might have destroyed Aurora's carefully constructed world. He looked at the newspaper clipping a grainy photo of Aurora, her face pale and strained, rushing past reporters. The media was relentless, framing her relationship with Ethan as a reckless personal failure that now threatened her company. The constant pressure was clearly taking its toll. "I am the liability," he thought, staring at the scarred palms of his hands. "I am the weakness that Victor's exploiting." His encounter with Victor had left him emotionally raw. The immense temptation of $5 million had highlighted the sheer difference in their status. Victor could withstand media storms. Ethan could not. To protect the woman he loved, the vulnerable, genuine woman he saw beneath the CEO armor, he had to remove the target. He had to disappear. The decision solidified painfully in his heart. If he left, Victor would lose his primary leverage. Aurora could claim she had been manipulated, that the relationship was a temporary lapse, and her corporate alliances would quickly stabilize. That evening, after Lily was asleep, Ethan began packing his old duffel bag. Not with many clothes, just tools, documents, and the framed photo of his late wife Lily and him. He planned to leave before dawn, heading north to find work in a smaller town where the name Ethan Miller held no currency. He was meticulously quiet, moving through the small house like a ghost. He was writing a brief, agonizing note to Aurora, explaining that he had to go, that he wasn't strong enough to fight her battles, when a small, soft voice startled him. Dad Lily was standing in the doorway of her room, rubbing sleep from her eyes. She wore her favorite pajamas covered in tiny constellations. Ethan quickly crumpled the note and stuffed it into his pocket. He hid the duffel bag behind his chair. "Hey, honey, everything all right?" Lily walked over and looked at the crowded desk. Her eyes, sharp and clear, even half asleep, immediately fixed on the small, worn travel bag. "Are we going on a trip?" she asked, her voice laced with confusion. Ethan hesitated, searching for a soft lie. "Not exactly, sweetie. I need to go fix something big far away for a little while." Lily didn't cry or pout. She tilted her head, her expression becoming serious, a look she often wore when studying a difficult Lego manual. "Is it because of the mean papers?" she asked. "The ones that say bad things about you?" And Miss Aurora Ethan knelt down, meeting her gaze. "It is, honey. It's too hard right now. Sometimes when things are too hard, the best thing to do is step away." Lily shook her head, a stubborn little gesture that reminded him so much of her mother. She walked closer to him and simply wrapped her small arms around his neck, holding on tightly. "Please don't go, Dad," she whispered, her voice cracking the last of his resolve. "Con qui men co Aurora lamb, I really cherish Miss Aurora. She smiles when she's with us. She smiles here, Daddy. Not like in the television. I want us to be together like a family." Her simple, pure plea hit him harder than Victor's threats. Lily wasn't talking about his reputation or Aurora's business. She was talking about home. She was talking about the warmth they had built together, the simple, unguarded joy Aurora found in their presence. Lily, in her innocent wisdom, saw the truth Aurora needed them. Leaving was not protection. It was abandonment. Ethan hugged her back fiercely, burying his face in her hair. He felt shame for his fear and gratitude for her courage. "You're right, sweetie," he murmured, his voice thick with emotion. "You're absolutely right. We stay and we fight. We fix this." He spent the next half hour tucking her back in, reading her a long, rambling story, ensuring she was secure. Then, driven by a new fierce determination, he grabbed his keys and headed toward Aurora's penthouse. Aurora was drowning. She sat on the edge of her enormous sterile bed in the penthouse, the city lights below a dizzying array of indifference. She was surrounded by the symbols of her success, custom furniture, irreplaceable art, total solitude. The weight of the media attacks combined with Victor's constant manipulative pressure to return to their stable contract had reduced her to a state of profound emotional exhaustion. When the building intercom announced Ethan Miller, she almost collapsed in relief. She hadn't spoken to him all day, fearing his reaction to the latest financial disasters. Ethan walked into the room, wet from the evening rain, looking rugged and worn, but utterly solid. She flew into his arms, a gasp escaping her lips. "Ethan, I'm so sorry," she choked out, her carefully maintained composure finally shattering. He's destroying the foundation. He's destroying my credit lines. I shouldn't have dragged you into this. I was supposed to be strong enough. She broke down, completely sinking onto the floor, pulling him with her. The mighty CEO reduced to a trembling woman. Through her sobs, the years of suppressed pain erupted. She began confessing her childhood trauma, the neglect, the emotional abandonment by her father after her mother's death in 1998, the loneliness in the gilded cage. They always left me. Ethan, they always left me alone because I was inconvenient. Victor is just like my father. He only wants the asset, the image, and I'm so terrified you'll leave too, that you'll see the cost and you'll walk away. Ethan held her, pulling her close against his strong, warm chest. He let her cry, absorbing the shock waves of her deep-seated fear of abandonment. He finally understood the full gravity of her initial attraction to his sanctuary. She wasn't seeking a rescue mission, she was seeking a home. "I won't leave Aurora," he reassured her, his voice absolute. "I won't leave. I came here tonight to run away to save your reputation, but Lily showed me that leaving isn't saving. You are not inconvenient, and you are not an asset. You are the kindest, bravest, and most magnificent woman I have ever known. And I love you. And I am your safe place, your home." He gently cupped her face, wiping her tears with his thumb. "We stay and we fight him together." As their eyes met, Aurora saw not a simple mechanic, but the unshakable foundation of love she had searched for her entire life. In that moment of complete vulnerability, she realized the truth. She had been in love with him since he refused her money, since he showed her what a life built on honor felt like. A quiet calm settled over her. The fear was still there, but it was overshadowed by a fierce, protective love for the man holding her. "Victor is wrong," she whispered, pulling back slightly. "He thinks he holds all the cards, but he doesn't have the one that matters." She rose slowly, pulling Ethan up with her. She walked over to the telephone console on the wall, the secure line used only for critical business communications. Without hesitation, Aurora Sterling pressed the speed dial for Victor Thorne. Victor answered immediately, his voice sharp with smug expectation. "Aurora, I trust you've seen the papers. I told you this is the only logical choice. Are you ready to discuss stability?" Aurora took a deep breath, her eyes locked on Ethan, who was watching her with quiet pride. "Victor," she stated, her CEO voice returning, but this time infused with a resolute finality. "This is the last time you will ever use my name. The corporate alliances are over. The personal relationship is over. We are done. I choose honor, not stability. Now take your threats and your logic and go to hell." She slammed the receiver back onto the cradle, severing the connection entirely. The silence in the penthouse was magnificent. She turned back to Ethan, a tired, radiant smile replacing her tears. "Welcome home," she whispered, pulling him in for a kiss that promised a battle but also a future. The following morning, the Sterling Group's public relations team was in controlled chaos. Aurora Sterling, having slept soundly for the first time in weeks, was unnervingly calm. Her decision to sever ties with Victor Thorne was final, but the public fallout and the inevitable counterattack required a decisive, overwhelming response. She needed to control the narrative, and the only way to do that was to redefine the stakes. This was no longer a corporate scandal. It was a love story. A hastily assembled press conference was scheduled for noon in the Sterling Group's main auditorium. The anticipation was electric. Reporters already sensing the magnitude of the fallout from Victor Thorne's sudden unexplained disappearance from Aurora's side packed the room. Ethan arrived 30 minutes before the event, wearing his only decent suit, a hand-me-down from his late father, slightly ill-fitting but clean. He was nervous, watching the sea of cameras and flashing lights. Ready to face the firing squad, he joked, trying to lighten the tension. Aurora, dressed in a sharp ivory suit that radiated authority, took his hand. Not a firing squad, Ethan. A ceremony. We are redefining what a foundation looks like, what a family looks like, and what I look like. Oh, Lily, meanwhile, was oblivious to the high stakes. She sat backstage with a publicist coloring a picture of the iron lung with bright red crayons. Precisely at 12 o'clock, Aurora walked onto the stage, flanked by her legal team. Ethan stood slightly behind her, a gesture that signaled his support but not his corporate authority. The silence was immediate, expectant. Aurora stepped up to the microphone, her spine straight. "Good afternoon," she began, her voice steady, silencing the initial murmur of shudders. "I have called this conference to address the relentless speculation regarding my personal life, the financial integrity of the Lily's Light Foundation, and the status of my relationship with Thorne Industries." She tackled the corporate issues first, coolly and factually announcing the immediate dissolution of all joint ventures with Thorne Industries and the appointment of an independent auditing firm to review the foundation's books, a preemptive move against Victor's legal threats. But before she could transition to the personal statement, the first volley was fired. A reporter from a major financial news network jumped up. "Ms. Sterling, speaking of integrity, Victor Thorne's office released a statement moments ago claiming that your foundation is merely a front used to funnel money to Mr. Miller. Furthermore, they claim his association with your company has directly led to significant unethical financial instability. How can you defend this clear mismanagement of charity funds?" The room exploded into a furious cacophony of questions and flashes. Victor had chosen his moment well, launching a direct public attack on the very thing Aurora cherished, the integrity of the foundation. Aurora raised a hand, demanding silence. Her gaze was locked on the reporter, radiating pure, cold fury. "Mr. Thorne is correct on one point," she stated, her voice cutting through the noise. "The foundation exists because of Mr. Miller. It exists because he demonstrated a level of honor that is entirely foreign to the world Mr. Thorne inhabits." She stepped away from the podium and walked directly to Ethan, taking his hand again. She turned back to the press, her voice softening, losing its CEO edge and becoming simply human. 2 months ago, Ethan Miller saved my life. He refused payment for his heroism. He accepted my foundation only on the condition that he could use it to help others. Mr. Thorne understands the world in terms of transactions. He offered Mr. Miller millions of dollars to leave my life and maintain corporate stability. A collective gasp swept through the room. Ethan Miller refused the money. He refused the easy way out. He chose his integrity. He chose Lily's Light, and he chose me. She looked up at Ethan, her eyes shining with unshed tears. The cameras were fixated on them, but in that moment the world dissolved. It was just the two of them. Then, in a move that stunned the world and permanently redefined the narrative, Aurora Sterling, the ice-cold CEO, slowly knelt onto one knee on the stage. Ethan stood frozen in shock. The reporters trained for decades to remain professional were scrambling, dropping notebooks, struggling to keep their cameras steady. Aurora looked up at him, her face full of radiant certainty. She reached into her pocket and pulled out a simple antique silver ring, not a diamond monstrosity, but a ring of honest, burnished metal. "Ethan Miller," she said, her voice clear and ringing with absolute conviction. "You saved me from the fire, and then you saved me from myself. You taught me that my worth is not measured by my assets, but by my heart. You showed me what home feels like, and you showed me that love is not a contract, but a foundation. She held out the ring. True love is not a transaction, and I will not sell my happiness anymore. Will you please make me an honest woman and marry me? The roar of the cameras and the shouts of the reporters were deafening, but they didn't matter. Ethan, tears streaming down his face, knelt down to meet her. Yes, he managed, his voice thick with emotion. Yes, Aurora, 1,000,000 times yes. He helped her rise, slipping the simple silver ring onto her finger. The embrace they shared on that stage was a public definitive statement that transcended business and politics. As they finally separated, Aurora took a deep breath, turning one last time to face the press, her smile genuine and triumphant. And finally, she concluded, pulling Lily onto the stage. The little girl looked confused but waved cheerfully at the flashing lights. Victor Thorne and the media are obsessed with asking who belongs in my life and who is my asset. Let me be clear. Aurora put one hand on Ethan's shoulder and the other on Lily's. Her voice was firm, resonating with a power far greater than her corporate title. My family is Ethan and Lily, and this is the only alliance that matters. The press conference ended not with a bang, but with a revelation, the conversion of a corporate titan into a woman who had finally found love and courage. The headlines tomorrow would not be about scandal or financial instability. They would be about the most audacious, heartfelt proposal in modern corporate history. The marriage of Aurora Sterling and Ethan Miller took place 3 months after the now legendary public proposal. It was a small, intimate ceremony held in the backyard of their newly purchased home, a modest, comfortable house with a spacious yard in a quiet neighborhood chosen for its proximity to good schools and Ethan's preferred industrial district. The chaos Victor Thorne attempted to unleash after the breakup was fierce, but ultimately futile. The independent audit Aurora commissioned quickly validated the integrity of the Lily's Light Foundation. Victor's financial attacks on Ethan's garage were met with a united legal front and massive public support following the press conference. The couple fought the legal battles together side by side, proving that their union was built not just on love, but on shared determination. 5 years passed. The Lily's Light Foundation thrived under their joint leadership. Ethan eventually left the day-to-day mechanics to manage the foundation's operations, ensuring resources were allocated with the same strict honor he brought to his workbench. Aurora surprisingly stepped down as CEO of the Sterling Group in late 2029. She took the chairmanship of the foundation's board, devoting her unparalleled strategic mind to philanthropy and scaling their mission to national reach. Ethan's garage, now called Miller Family Mechanics, flourished under the management of a single father Ethan had mentored. The garage prioritized hiring single parents, offering flexible hours and on-site childcare subsidized by the foundation. On a crisp autumn afternoon in 2030, Ethan, Aurora, and 12-year-old Lily were taking a drive. They weren't in Aurora's sleek electric sedan. They were in the iron-lung Ethan's old truck, now painstakingly restored and polished to a deep, honest shine. It ran beautifully, a testament to Ethan's skill and the symbolic importance it held. Lily sat between them, sharing an audiobook through a split headphone set. The windows were rolled down, letting in the cool, earthy scent of the Oregon countryside. "Dad, stop here," Lily exclaimed, pointing to a small field where they often stopped for ice cream. Ethan pulled the old truck over. They sat in comfortable silence for a moment, just watching the sunlight filter through the trees. Aurora leaned her head against Ethan's shoulder. She wore a simple sweater and jeans, looking more relaxed and genuinely happy than she ever had in tailored Chanel suits. "Do you ever miss it?" Ethan asked softly, knowing the answer but wanting to hear it anyway. The boardrooms, the power, the view from the 45th floor. Aurora smiled, a slow, deep, contented smile. I miss the clarity of a balance sheet sometimes, but never the coldness, Ethan, never the fear. She shifted her gaze, sweeping over the restored dashboard of the old truck, then resting on Ethan's rugged profile. She reached out and squeezed his hand, tracing the oil stains that never quite faded. Victor offered me a cold empire. She reflected the memory of her ex-partner, distant and sterile. He offered me stability built on transactions and fear. You, my love, you gave me a house of warmth, built on grease honesty and a little girl's laughter. Ethan reached across Lily and kissed Aurora's temple. It's the best kind of foundation, isn't it, Lily? Finally pulling off her headphones, looked at them both, her face alight. I vote for ice cream. They both laughed a sound, blending the rough warmth of the mechanic's world with the polished joy of the CEO's heart. Ethan started the iron lung, the engine roaring, a powerful, honest affirmation of their beautiful, unconventional, and forever home. And perhaps the greatest lesson we take from the story is that the deepest love is found not in wealth, but in the willingness to choose honor over comfort. Aurora discovered that true riches lie in a mechanic's integrity and a child's innocent embrace. If this story moved your heart, please let us know where you are listening from and share the deepest feelings this tale stirred within you in the comments below. We truly hope you will support our channel by subscribing and find another story that touches your soul by clicking the newest video now appearing on your screen.